For more on this, let's bring in former Kentucky Attorney General and 1792 Exchange CEO Daniel Cameron, who is also a Senate candidate. Daniel, great to have you here. I want to get to a number of injunctions and cases, but let's start with this USAID ruling. As you heard from my colleague Madeline Rivera, it's a pretty big win for the Trump administration. What do you make of it?
Griff, it is a fantastic win for the Trump administration and their perseverance. Judge Quattlebaum was exactly right. Unconventional doesn't necessarily mean unconstitutional. The fact of the matter is that President Trump was elected to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. USAID had become a haven for the radical left. Again, we want to see a president that is cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. That's what he was elected on. You know, as a conservative, we've been talking about this for 30 years. Ronald Reagan started it, and Donald Trump is going to get the job done.
It's interesting you talk about Reagan, and Daniel, I can remember back in the 90s, I was working in talk radio. Rush Limbaugh was the king. He often talked about, you know, any one of these examples of waste, fraud, and abuse would be a story for a week. Now we're learning them, and in the interview with Bret Baier, Elon saying that they have upwards of $1 billion fines on a near regular basis.
It is absolutely ridiculous that the USAID program and the bureaucracy within USAID has been allowed to run rogue. I mean, we saw this back starting with the Clinton administration, where they were essentially trying to push population control through USAID. It's gotten worse, or got worse under the Biden administration, where they were essentially trying to push the transmania, if you will, or transgenderism on other countries. And ultimately, that was bad for a whole host of reasons. One of which, the main of which, is that Americans don't want that sort of nonsense within their programs that are coming out of the United States. And I'm, again, pleased beyond imagination that the Trump administration is allowed to proceed with the cuts at USAID. Mm-hmm. Again, whether it's DOGE or any other part of the Trump administration, they are about making sure that government is working for the American people, and this is a step in the right direction.
Let me switch gears to the other significant ruling yesterday, and that is over the deportations under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. You saw Judge Boasberg put that temporary restraining order on it. A D.C. three-judge panel ruled against the Trump administration, and so the Trump team took this to the Supreme Court, asking them to resume such deportation flights as the Venezuelans and criminal aliens we saw taken to El Salvador, to that mega prison. What's your read on this? Where's this headed?
Well, I'm optimistic that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of the Trump administration. Look, just this past week, you saw a ringleader of the MS-13 apprehended by the FBI. That's the type of leadership we need for this country. We've got to keep our folks here in the United States safe. Again, I'm hopeful and optimistic that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of the Trump administration. It's important that we have safe streets for our communities. That's why President Trump was voted in overwhelmingly. He is the law and order president. He's going to get our streets safe again, and I'm optimistic and hopeful that the Supreme Court will allow them to continue the important work here.
And lastly, Daniel, I just want to address the overall general number of judges and injunctions. You can look and see across the past few presidencies, you've got 12 for Obama's 2 terms, 14 under Biden, 6 under Bush, 64 under Trump's first administration. And so far, in just the past 10 weeks, there have been 17 injunctions. Do you see these courts really outside of their jurisdiction with these rulings?
Griff, what we have seen, whether it was when President Trump was still a citizen or even now, we are seeing the weaponization of our judicial system in a way that simply is ultimately trying to be an obstacle to the Trump agenda. It is obviously awful to see this happening. I'm hopeful that, again, once these cases make their way all the way through the process into the Supreme Court, we're going to get some good and favorable rulings that allow the administration to proceed and protect the American worker, protect American families, and make sure that we enter into this golden age that President Trump has talked about.
Just in the last 10 seconds or so I've got, do you believe there's a House hearing about these judges? Do you believe some of these judges should potentially face impeachment?
Well, I am pleased that the House and even the Senate are ultimately making decisions to scrutinize and hold these folks accountable. I think it's important for the legislature to make sure they're looking at these folks.
All right, Daniel Cameron, we appreciate your time and thank you for getting up for us on a Saturday.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.